Okay, this is going to be a quick little video showing how you can use Canvas Workspace to do your drawing files when you're going to use a sentiment mat rather than trying to line them up and sort them out on a scan and cut. It's easier to do them in Canvas Workspace and then send them to the scan and cut. So I'm going to go and get the file, and I'm going to use issue 16, which is our latest one at the moment until we're waiting for the other issue to come out. And I'm going to use project 17, and in my project files and into the white, and I want the sentiment mat. So I'm going to bring the cutting file onto Canvas Workspace, and there it is. And then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set that as a cutting line only, so that when I send the file over to the scan and cut, it will only read that as a cutting line and not a cutting drawing line. Alright, then I'm going to go and get the actual sentiment that's for this particular project. So I'm going to go into the file, draw files, click on the with love and bring that into Canvas. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set that as a drawing line, because every time you bring something into Canvas Workspace, it automatically makes it a cutting and or drawing line, a cutting drawing line, all depending what you pick on your scan and cut. So we know that we want this only to be a cutting line and the sentiment to be a drawing line. And then I'm going to group the sentiment so that I can bring that over into my sentiment mat. And I'm going to highlight both of those, go into edit, and then we're going to align center and align middle. Right, so that is now perfectly centered within that square sentiment mat. And then before I send it to the scan and cut, I'm going to group that, which means now that I can move that anywhere I like, and I know I'm not going to lose my alignment. So the first thing I'm going to do is then download that to my scan and cut, and then we will close, and that has now gone over. So I'll just get the SNC set up, and then I'll show you how that looks on the machine. Okay, so I've got my mat set up in the scan and cut, and I'm now going to retrieve the data because I have a Wi-Fi enabled SNC, so I'm going to retrieve my data. So you can either send it via Wi-Fi if you have that, or send it via if you've got a cable that connects between your computer and your cutting machine, or if you don't have either of those, then you can download it onto a USB from your computer and then put your USB in the side of your SNC and retrieve the sentiment from there. So anyway, it's actually now placed it on there, right, via Wi-Fi. And because I grouped this in Canvas Workspace, I can now move that anywhere on the mat. So if you've got odd bits of card that you need to use up, it just means that you can make use of all your bits and bobs. So I'm just going to scan my mat to start with for the card that I'm using. Alright, you can't see this very clearly. I'll just make that a little bit darker so that you can see. No, you're not going to see that very well. But this is, I can see it here. I've got an odd piece of card and I've got some squares already cut out because I'm using this for sentiments. So now I can move that into the next available space on my piece of card that I want to use up. Okay, so the first thing I do, it's entirely up to you, but I prefer to actually draw first, because then your card is still, you know, solid on your mat, and then I do the cut afterwards. All right, so when you've said okay, when you're happy where it is on your piece of card, and you go say okay, and you go into to the select, right, when you press draw, the sentiment will be in blue, so it's draw only, and there's no, you can't see any square behind that. And what I'll do is I'll just try and, there we go, we'll just zoom in a little bit, and then you can see that there's no rectangle around that sentiment, so it's only going to draw the sentiment. Right, if I was to set that to cut, all right, there's the sentiment mat, and it will just cut that for you. Because you've set this in Canvas Workspace, the Scan and Cut knows exactly what you want to do with each piece. So I always draw first, and I'll just take my cutting blade out. All right, and it's telling me that's going to take a minute. My pressure is on -5, because what I'm going to do for this, I'm just going to use the felt tip pens that come with the Scan and Cut. So these are just the Brother felt tip pens, which are so they're the fibre ones. So you don't want actually too much pressure on the nib of those. So when you set to draw, if you've got a universal pen holder, if you've got like metallic pens, you know, all different types of coloured pens or whatever that fit into your universal pen holder, then you can use those. Or if you do foiling, I do nearly all my stuff, whether it's the sentiments and the images, I do a lot of foiling, and I use the We Are Memory Keepers foil quill. It's entirely up to you, all right, but just for this demonstration, I'm just going to use the Brother pen. So I've got a pressure -5 and speed 3. We'll see how that goes. That should be okay. So I'll just kick that off to start. All right, so that's finished drawing. So I'm going to say okay, and I'm going to take that pen out. All right, put my blade back in. All right, so you've got to remember, don't move your card, don't remove your mat, because it'd be really hard now to get that to line up again. All right, so don't move your image on your mat or anything while you're doing this. So now I'm going to ask it to cut, and my pressure -4. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Speed 5. And make sure that half cut is off, because you don't want it only cutting part way through your card. If you tend to use half cut for anything, if you're doing score lines or whatever, just always make sure that you have set that back to off when you've finished using it. All right, so I will take that off the mat. And that's finished cutting, and just close that down. All right, and just focus that in, because I forgot I zoomed that in so that you could see the screen. And there's our aligned sentiment within the sentiment mat. Okay, so that's using the sentiments on a mat that you're going to add to a project. And obviously you don't have to keep to those drawing files and those shapes. You can make any shape you know, you can bring on any shape you like and any sentiment that will fit into the shape, and do that all through Canvas Workspace. Now, the other way of drawing sentiments onto your projects, you do get some of them where they actually draw direct onto the charisma. So this is for anyone who hasn't actually done this yet, or not 100% sure about how to do this. So I'm just going to delete what we've just done from here, and I'm going back to a really old project in issue 1, which means I've just got to swap my USBs over, because issue 1 is on my first USB. So I'm going to retrieve the data, and I'm going to go into issue 1. I hope I've written all this down so I know where they are. Right, and it's The Couple in Love. All right, and we're going to have a look at project 7. Now, on one of the charisma sheets, it shows the trees that you cut out. It's quite a big shape of trees that you cut out. And I've actually had a spare one in my bits and bobs box. So I've got that out ready, and I've actually replaced that back on my mat because it's already cut out. And all you have to do is make sure that you get your charisma as straight as possible. So I use the guidelines on the mat to line it all back up again, so that I can get it as straight as possible. Right, oops, sorry. So I need the drawing file from The Couple in Love. So we're going to choose that, which is A Beautiful Life. Right, and we're going to say OK. Now I'm going to edit, and I'm going to make sure that that is grouped, because they don't always group the sentiments. So that is now grouped. And then the next thing I'm going to do is scan the charisma, which is one of the matte layers that goes on this project. Okay, so what I'm going to do, because this was in my stash, I've already got the sentiment written on there, and it's just in my box for if I want to use it for another project at some time. So the first thing I'm going to do is put my background to dark so that I can see where the charisma mat is, and there it is. That's the mat within the project that they show you that you can draw your sentiment direct onto the project. All right, so it is the sentiment is Beautiful Life. Yep, so there's mine up there, and what I'll do is I'll just zoom in a bit so that we can see. So I'll just bring this over. All right, and we'll scroll down. All right, so for this one, they do show in the project that it is around about here. So I'm just going to bring on our drawing file. So basically, you can put that drawing file wherever you want to on that piece of the project. So if you wanted it up in this corner, you could do that. This corner, anywhere you like. All right. So I put it there because at the time I actually followed exactly as the project was in the Digimag. Right, so it's entirely up to you. All you have to remember is wherever you put your sentiment is what else are you adding onto that mat. So what embellishments are going on that project. So for instance, this one is the couple in love under the umbrella, so that they're quite a large image. So do you want them on this side or do you want them on this side? I kept a project because the sentiment was here and the couple in love go over here. And I think on this one, if I remember rightly, there was a bow or something up in this corner. So it's entirely up to you where you want that sentiment to sit on the mat. Okay, so once you've placed it, if you're happy and you say, yep, I want it up in that corner instead, and I just want roughly a nice same distance from the top to the sides. So you would just, and then you obviously you can do this by increments if you wanted that to be a bit more up in the corner and have a sort of the same spacing. Okay, so you would say okay in exactly the same way as if you were drawing onto a sentiment mat. I'll just take the background back down again to light, and you keep saying okay until you get to where you want to draw. All right, so you would set that to draw, and it will show the sentiment in blue to show that that is a drawing file. All right, you know exactly where your piece of paper is on your mat. So again, don't accidentally remove the mat, or because again, if you try to line that back up, you'd have to start again. All right, because it'd be impossible to get that maybe in exactly the same place, and obviously you don't want to move your sentiment once you're all set. So if I was to send that to draw, take my cutting blade out, send that to draw again, if I was using the fibre pens, or if you've got flexi fine liners, I would most probably keep that on -5 with about a speed of 3. Or if you've got like metallic pens, if you want it sort of like a gold or a silver and that, then obviously you would just have to experiment of how much pressure you would need. So it might be a good idea, if you have got a universal pen holder and you've got a set of pens, if you put some scrap paper on your mat and then just have a play of how much pressure you need for all the different type pens, and then you can just make a note of them in a book. All right, and then once you've kicked that off to draw, and I'll just show you, as I said, this one was already done because I've got this sitting in my stash as some spare bits and bobs. See if I can bring that in. So I'll just zoom out of there so you can just see the shape of the mat. So that was the shape of the mat. So my sentiment was exactly the same as the project. And then what gets added to this particular project is the couple in love. And I've actually got a cutout, I've got a spare cutout of them as well. So that's why the sentiment is right over in this side of the mat, because the couple sit on that side. But again, if you wanted to move them around, you could put the sentiment over this side instead, and move you might want the couple on this side. So then you would just put the sentiment on the other side or up in the top left hand corner, entirely up to you. All right, I hope this has helped. Okay, thanks very much. Bye for now.